Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's CRM Magazine web event brought to you by Yieldmo, Snowflake and Looker. I'm Bob Fernikes. I'm the publisher of CRM Magazine, and I'll be the moderator for today's broadcast. Our presentation today is titled, Why Data and Infrastructure Are Key to Determining Customer Intent. Before we start, I just want to explain how you can be part of this broadcast. At the end of the event, there'll be a Q&A section. So if you have a question during the presentation, just type it into the question box provided and click on the Submit button. We'll try to answer as many questions as possible today, but if your question has not been answered, we'll follow up by email within a few days. And just for joining us today, one lucky viewer will win this Amazon Echo Dot, and we'll announce the winner at the end of the broadcast. Plus, if you'd like a copy of the presentation, you can download a PDF from the resource icon on the console once the event is archived. And we will also have a couple of polling questions during the event, so if you'd like to answer them, we'll announce the polls live. So now to introduce our speakers for today, we've got Michael Nixon, Senior Director of Product Marketing at Snowflake, Jamie Davidson, VP Product at Looker, Alex Few, the Senior Director in Advertising and Marketing Insights at Yieldmo, and Indu Narayan, Director of Data at Yieldmo. If you'd like to review the speakers' bios, just click on the arrows under their photos on the console. But before we move into today's presentation, I want to ask you our first polling question. You'll see that pop up on the screen. The question is, what's your top reason for moving your analytic workloads into the cloud? Possible answers are to reduce effort and complexity, boost query concurrency and or performance, support a larger number of analytic workloads across different teams, implement self-service analytics, or eliminate or reduce data prep. So I'll give everybody a chance to make their selections, and then we'll get to the answers. We've got people from actually a couple of different manufacturing or truck manufacturing companies, AAA, some high-tech, some financial services, New York City Department of Corrections even. So there's a few people on the line right now. Okay, so let's take a look at the answers. Okay, so the question was, what's your top reason for moving your analytic workloads into the cloud? A little over 9% said to reduce effort and complexity. A little over 18% said to boost query concurrency and or performance. A little over 36% said to support a larger number of analytic workloads across different teams. And the same amount, 36.4%, said to improve self-service analytics. Okay, so Michael, and I'm going to pass the event over actually to Michael Nixon. Again, he's the Senior Director of Product Marketing at Snowflake. Do these answers surprise you at all?
Well, thank you. No, it does not. It does not surprise me. So I appreciate getting this insight before we launch into our conversation. So, yes, we know that a lot of users would like to basically have a platform that simplifies their environment, in particular supporting multiple workloads, and we know that's really important. And so let me talk a little bit about Snowflake and what makes us special. And let's get to the first Snowflake slide. There we go. So a little bit about Snowflake and who we are and what we do. So Snowflake, we're in the cloud first and foremost. We were an architecture that's built specifically for the cloud. And what we have in Snowflake is, the slides are jumping around here, is an environment that supports ANSI SQL. It's an automated management environment, so basically you have to do very little to manage it. It supports all your data, and all your data in this case means JSON, semi-structured, and structured data. It supports all your users, meaning your separate workloads, regardless of the number of departments you may be supporting or different users you may be supporting, as well as it supports all of your workloads and queries concurrently. And then in addition, you can share live data. And what I mean by sharing live data is that you can extend your data to an outside individual, meaning someone outside of your analytics infrastructure, and they can operate on that data without you ever having to move it. Now, let's get into more specifics about what's under the covers with Snowflake. So what you see here is an architecture that we refer to as our multi-clustered shared data architecture. What makes it special with Snowflake is that even though you see 3 layers, each of these layers are independent. You have a cloud services layer, you have a compute layer, and you have a storage layer. And what's special about this is that you're able to scale all of these resources independently. So as you see me doing here, I'm taking down the storage. And so you're able to do that without any impact to the compute environment. If you contrast that to a typical infrastructure today, if you were to scale storage, it might require you to scale the compute resources, and therein lies a problem. It's a problem because it's disruptive, as well as it can be expensive because compute nodes in general cost more than storage. Now, you can eliminate all your storage. You can bring up a maximum amount of storage. You can take down your compute nodes as well. And the compute nodes is where all of the data processing occurs. And what we mean by this is that these compute nodes are where the actual workloads reside. So you can have a workload that's dedicated to a business analyst, for example, or you can have a workload that's dedicated to run executive dashboards. In the case with Looker, obviously, you can have a BI compute engine running nothing but Looker. And this type of environment makes it conducive for running your operations much quicker. So it eliminates the need of having to manage the infrastructure. So depending on the intent of that data, you're able to customize your environment, and that's really special and what Snowflake allows. And within each of these individual compute nodes, I'd like to add, you can actually scale the size of the nodes up and down, and that's what you see in the far left with the boxes disappearing. And so what this means is conceptually, you can have different workloads operating concurrently. And this is very, I would say, dramatic for most environments that are not accustomed to this sort of thing. This is very disruptive, certainly from our opinion. That's how we see it. And so as a BI user of Looker, you can have a workload that's dedicated on a warehouse, and that you might see at 9 a.m., for example, you can have a bunch of users coming in, banging against Looker, and it could be running executive dashboards, it could be running your job that you have queued up as your own individual user or what have you. And in parallel, you can have data, new data streaming in. So from an ad tech perspective with Yieldmo, for example, and they'll talk way more about it than I will, but you can have data coming in parallel while you're having these analytics run. And you can construct this any way you like, because virtually the capacity with Snowflake is unlimited from a concurrency perspective. So you can customize for your specific business needs, and all during this, there's no struggle or contention for resources. And I'll allow Yieldmo to walk through that and explain more from their actual use case perspective. This is the magic of Snowflake. It allows you to do all of this from a single infrastructure. You do not need to manage a thing, or barely little, if that, and a lot of capabilities are built in from security, backup protection, disaster recovery, or what I'll say high availability recovery, and node protection and things of that nature. So you can focus all your attention on empowering your business, empowering people, and providing exceptional customer experiences, and worry little about the infrastructure. So that's what I have to talk about with respect to Snowflake. Just want to give a brief overview of how we can help you to eliminate infrastructure and focus more on the intent.
Now I'd like to turn it over to Jamie with Looker.
I'm Jamie Davidson, VP of Product at Looker. I'm going to talk a little bit about how we can power use cases like what Yieldmo will tell you about in just a minute, on top of incredible analytical data warehouses like Snowflake. So real quick about Looker, we've been around for around 6 years or so. We've got over 1,400 customers and have raised nearly $200 million from the likes of Capital G most recently and Goldman Sachs, as well as great venture capital firms too. Redpoint led our Series A, and so a mutual investor in Snowflake too. So our partnership goes way back. We're part of the same families. But we've got global presence and partnerships deeply sort of within the broader ecosystem. And really, what Looker is at its core is it's a data platform that enables our customers to build analytical experiences. And really, what that means is we want to give you the best of both worlds in the analytical paradigm. We want to allow you to have the governance that's necessary to be able to produce a single source of truth that internal use cases and external use cases can rely on, as well as having a very flexible analytical framework that allows for self-service analysis too, that allows for business users to satisfy and answer questions. We've got a bunch of incredible customers too, like Yieldmo, folks across the board from Fortune 100 companies to novel tech companies too, folks that are putting data first in their operations and in their business. And universally too, the review sites agree to this is a placement on the G2 Crowd, a customer-led review site that sort of shows us as leaders in the marketing analytics space too, which Yieldmo will talk more about. And specifically for marketing, I want to touch on a little bit of the philosophy that Looker enables companies to be able to operate under too. There's sort of at its core, Looker is a platform that allows you to have a single source of truth. And really, that single source of truth allows an organization to unlock value from their data. This single source of truth in a marketing context too allows you to define metrics in a single place too, and never have to debate about what lifetime value for a customer is again too, because it's all governed in a modern developer workflow as a part of the Looker platform. It can enable you to pull in a wide variety of disparate data sources into a powerful analytical data warehouse like Snowflake and construct a 360 view of your customers, whether it's marketing spend data or product event data, CRM and transactional data. You can look at every touch point an organization has in this marketing context powered by this platform. And really with Looker, what you get is basically, really, the data alone is not sufficient. We want to drive insight, and we want to ultimately drive value. The data has to be consistent. It's got to be governed. It's got to be available when you need it. And we basically can leverage the expertise of our internal teams as well as our partners and our customers to extend the best analytical practices going forward. And so just to touch really quickly on how we actually do this. Looker is a data platform and an analytical layer that allows you to build custom analytical experiences. We connect to a wide variety of SQL-based databases too, but importantly, let the data sit in the data warehouse too, where technologies like Snowflake's decoupled storage and compute have dramatically transformed the landscape too, in terms of what was in terms of performance and cost and what's possible in the analytical world. And we power this platform powers a really rich BI experience, but it also powers the same governance layer, the same model-based approach. Modern developer workflows also can power embedded context, and it can power scheduled context too, sending data and taking action in third-party systems. It can power data science-oriented workflows too, where you've defined your features in a single governed place, and you can do rapid fire development of that generation too. And to sort of switch gears a little bit too, to touch on the embedded analytics workflow, this is creating an analytical experience to be exposed to third parties, to customers, to internal customers as well. Approaching an analytical project, at the surface may seem easy and interesting too. It's, building pretty charts and connecting to a database. How hard can it be? And, we see customers thinking through this process. Typically, they think, okay, well, maybe we can just build this ourselves. And there are some pros to that. You can customize it to the specific experience that you'd want. You can develop it in a modern, developer-friendly workflow, and you can keep your data in your database too. You don't have to ship it to some other vendor that would be required for extracts. But the reality is, this can be slow to value. This isn't necessarily core to the product or the business that you're doing. And really, in a total cost of ownership perspective, the ongoing maintenance and the ongoing development can be prohibitively expensive. So really, what we see is when approaching these types of projects, you see the pretty charts in database too. What you don't really see is the security and the access control and the administration of it. Tying it to scheduling, delivering the data in third-party services too. It's a big effort and a big lift, and one that we think the Looker platform really helps enable. And this is really, as you enter into these products, this is what's necessary. So starting from that build perspective too, people may think about buying, and there are pros. It's quick to value. It may not be core, so you may want to outsource it too, and it's complete. But the cons typically are it's not a flexible solution. Maybe you have to move your database. Maybe it doesn't scale. And really, what we think is, Looker provides the best of both worlds. We are very easy to deploy. Incredibly fast to develop upon too. The architecture that we've focused on allows you to keep your data in the data warehouse. We can take advantage of the novel technologies like Snowflake that allow for incredible analytical experiences on massive scales of data, and it's also tied and core to the modern developer workflow. So that's a real quick summary of Looker at a high level. We're a data platform that enables BI use cases, that enables embedded analytic use cases too. I'm excited for you guys to hear from Yieldmo and how they've used Looker and Snowflake too in their business as well. And again, I'm Jamie Davidson, and thanks. And I'll pass this back over to Bob too, and want to thank you again for hosting us today.
Great. Hey, thanks so much, Jamie, and also Michael. Before we pass things over to Alex, I'm just going to ask another quick poll. Okay, the question is, how many different data components are you currently using, including BI tools, data management tools, and data infrastructure? The possible answers are 1 to 2, 3 to 4 is the second answer, 5 to 6 is the third answer, and the fourth answer is 7 and above. So I'll give everybody a second to make their choices there. We just want to take the temperature of the people out there. And I also want to remind everybody that there will be a Q&A at the end. So if you have any questions for any of our panelists, just type them into the box, hit submit, and we'll get to them. If we can't get them to them today, we'll follow up by email. So, all right, let's take a look at what we're going to see. Let's see the results here. Okay, how many different data components? About 9%. A little under 10% said 1 to 2. Okay, the big winner is 54.5% said 3 to 4. 18.2% said 5 to 6. And a little over 18% said 7 and above. I'm going to pass the event over now to, again, Alex Fu. He's the Senior Director of Advertising and Marketing Insights at Yieldmo. Does that surprise you at all, Alex?
Not really. I've worked in this industry with data providers for a little over a decade now, and I think 3 to 4 is probably the sweet spot. For us, if you include a couple of homegrown BI tools, it maybe adds up to 5 or 6, but I think 3 to 4 is more than enough to manage on a daily, weekly basis. So, yeah, it makes sense to me. So thank you guys for hosting and inviting us to speak here. My name is Alex Fu. I'm the Senior Director of Insights at Yieldmo, and I'll be followed by Indu Narayan, Director of Data, to go through some of the more technical details on Snowflake and Looker. So first, I just want to introduce who we are. We are a ad tech company focused on design-driven ad experiences through creative development. And ultimately, we leverage those experiences to understand user engagement, which I'll get into in a second. But founded in 2012, and headquarters are here in NYC. We work with a variety of clients. We have 3 here, but dozens and dozens of brands across retail, auto, e-commerce, telco, to name a few. So to give you a really high-level visual idea of what we do, this is generally our campaign flow. So an advertiser or agency will come to us, typically to leverage our unique formats, and the user engagement that we derive from each of our ad impressions helps us target and understand where to run these creative ad experiences. And then finally, our partnerships with media companies, mobile publishers, as well as the big ad exchanges help us deliver ads that we think are more engaging and less frustrating for the mobile users. So a couple of ads that we always show all of our customers are the disruptive interstitial ads, and this is an example of a pre-roll ad that might appear in the header of a mobile site. So we don't do any ads with X's on them. We don't do any interstitials or interruptive ads, and we think that's what makes us different. But the other differentiator for us is a lot of the aforementioned engagement data. So passively, we're collecting things like scrolls, which we define as a vertical change in direction, swipes, which are a horizontal change in direction for a carousel type format. We also have tiltable formats, and we've dipped our toes a little bit in 360 video formats that leverage the gyroscope to look around. So a lot is tracked behind the scenes that help us really understand what are users doing and why they might be interested in a certain ad. So this was a video, but it was meant to capture all of the different metrics that we're tracking. We capture all of these metrics every 200 milliseconds, which is typical for things like viewability, video plays, and other time-related ad metrics. But we are really upping the game here by tracking all of these different ad engagements as well as the typical ones that our advertisers require. So if you think about it, roughly 75 proprietary ad metrics that we're capturing with every single impression. Some of those impressions, to a user might last 1 to 3 seconds, and running roughly 8 billion mobile impressions every month adds up to a lot of data. And one thing Indu is going to speak to is the growing amount of data required a partner like Snowflake to help us store and access that data. And we leverage Looker as our accessibility tool when it comes to everyday users, non-technical users, and into a lot of our client presentations also. So I'll hand it over now to Indu to speak to the rest of the presentation.
Thank you, Alex. Hi, my name is Indu Narayan. I am the Director of Data here at Yieldmo. Me and my team are responsible for managing the infrastructure, the data infrastructure, as well as building data products for Yieldmo. The next section kind of speaks to how did we go about the journey of, what was the challenges we were getting into, and how did we choose our partners, and what are the benefits that we have been having since we have engaged with Snowflake and Looker. A couple case studies to kind of highlight these benefits, and then a short overview of what we are looking to do with this new infrastructure that we are on. Challenges. So just to give a little bit of a background on where we were probably around 12 months from today, we had this Hadoop infrastructure which was built about probably 5 years ago with the only idea of probably to support some kind of operational reporting where periodically people want to generate reports about revenue or impressions or counts for a client. The key thing to note here is the infrastructure was on Hadoop, and the data was stored in terms of serialized protobuf files, where each record would have like 700 odd fields stored together. The granularity that we could hold on this, 160 node cluster was about only 3 months of data. We didn't have any BI tools other than some homegrown ones, which were pretty hard to, develop and deploy. So most of the time the business was using Excel for visualization. And also the only way to report was someone had to write MapReduce jobs in Java or write SQL in MySQL, which was completely aggregated data and really not much of granular user level information in it. So given that background, you can imagine that we used to invariably have a really long request cycle for our data requests. Everyone in the organization, the market, the different departments, marketing, sales, finance, has to funnel all their requests through a team, the data engineering team, which was very small, probably a team of 2, and they had to every time write, like I mentioned, code and for MapReduce Java code, test it and deploy, and if there's an issue again, they have to go through this cycle over and over before the data is clean, and then report it back to the requester. This entire cycle would literally take between development and the overhead of workload about 2 weeks to get done. So you can imagine for a requester, for someone in sales or marketing to wait around for 2 weeks to get a simple information about how much did we make this in last week, or how much was in impressions or clicks. It was just daunting and painful. Not just the time it took to get the information. The other challenge that the teams in the company were having is around the gap between what they really wanted and what the data or the infrastructure could support. Say they wanted to know year-over-year revenue comparison. The best we could do was 3 months of data. I mean, it's not even close to what they really needed to run the business. Say they wanted to optimize campaign at the user level. The best we could do was some aggregated counts for that campaign. In terms of visualization, like I mentioned before, the best we could do was download the data into Excel and do visualizations, bars and line graphs in Excel. But really what they wanted was a real-time dashboard that continuously shows the campaign performance and advertiser KPIs. So the pain with which we could reach the data and the lack of information or the too much of aggregation of data clearly was reducing the amount the innovation that we wanted to drive within the organization. Because no one could really access or touch and feel the data, there was no way people could think of new ways of knowing how our users are doing or finding new ways of optimizing KPIs for our marketers. So there was definitely a drive top-down through the organization that we need to open up this data so that it's accessible to everyone at any given point in time. So the democratization of data was essential to driving innovation through the organization. So there was a definite need that we had to get out of this legacy system, which was restricting the information flow and in turn reducing the value we could generate within the organization. All right. So once you have kind of a sense of where we were, the kind of challenges we had with even reaching to our own data or making any sense out of it, there were some very clear high-level requirements that made us decide the partners we chose. We wanted to have really low-level user data at all times. We wanted to make sure that it was safe and secure, and we wanted to make sure that it was accessible to everyone in the organization at any given point in time. So we chose Snowflake for our database infrastructure, and we chose Looker for our business intelligence and analytics user interface, the accessibility piece of requirement. Here is a very high-level data flow diagram of how the data kind of flows through our infrastructure. From the time the data leaves the user's phone, where we are capturing all the micro engagements between the ad coming into view and the time the user does any action with it, like all the gestural data, all the dwell, time, exposure data, all that data gets captured on the phone, moves through our infrastructure, and is probably available in Looker within 5 to 10 minutes of the event. And along the way, we do some transformation. We do like things like fraud checks, transformations for like data such as location or device info. But given all that, it's still the data is available in Snowflake within 10 minutes, and in turn in Looker within the same time, because Looker just sits on top of Snowflake. So let's just talk about the benefits that each of our partners have provided or kind of empowered us with, and how that is helping us in our business. Snowflake benefits. So here are the 3 key benefits I wanted to kind of highlight through this presentation that I think have really helped us with this partnership. So let's talk about the first one. So at Yieldmo, the data team is a really small team. We are a team of 3. So you can imagine running an infrastructure where I would say today, like we have about 200 terabytes of data compressed on our entire data, enterprise data, and the rate at which we receive is almost like 300 million impressions per day. That's the speed at which the data comes in. If that infrastructure had to be maintained by 3, it's an enormous amount of work. But with Snowflake doing most of that work, they make sure that the data, once all we need to do is ingest the data into their infrastructure. From then on, they make sure that the data is securely stored. It is optimized for fast access. It is monitored. It is you have the backups taken every day, the daily maintenance, patches and upgrades is all Snowflake's responsibility. Here's a use case that kind of highlights this particular feature that Snowflake offers. So this is actually a real incident that happened in our environment. So this was way back when the upper half of the view, where when we were in the Hadoop infrastructure, this was an incident where a subset of the servers went offline. They just became unresponsive. The Yieldmo engineer had to work round the clock to figure out what the issue was, and it was almost impossible to, and almost took us 24 hours to finally figure out and fix the issue. Meanwhile, while this triage was underway, the rest of the downstream systems were falling behind on data. And by the time we fully caught up and were ready for production, it almost took us 4 days, 2 resources working around the clock to get the systems back online. During this whole time, any kind of new development, working on projects was completely stopped. Everyone was firefighting this whole time. Whereas now, with Snowflake, we had something similar. One of the incidents where a daily job was taking 22 hours and didn't finish. All we had to do was call up Snowflake support, while they continued the triage and figuring out what was going on, we at Yieldmo, our team was engaged in building new products, continuing with the initiatives that they were on. And meanwhile, within less than 24 hours, the tech team in Snowflake released a patch for our issue, and all the systems were back online, fully caught up within 24 hours. Right. Now let's just talk about how fast is Snowflake and how soon can we get to our data, and how this has been a great success from where we were and where we are now. So here's an example. As all of us, or many of us who run data infrastructures know, that every day you need to meet a certain SLA with all your daily jobs. That's like one of the primary requirements that these infrastructures. So this was a situation that was quite a regular occurrence with our old infrastructure, where the daily jobs would run behind schedule. You come in the morning and the reports are not ready, or the data is unavailable, or the system is behind because of some issue. So the standard operating procedure used to be, kill the running MR jobs, let the daily ETL jobs catch up, and the mean time to recovery on a regular basis used to be 10 to 12 hours. And all this because, we ran out of resources on our nodes. And if we had to provision, you add, maybe 5 hours to just provision a new node. Again, this was typical of how we had implemented Hadoop, not so much as, maybe there are better ways to do this, but this is how we were, and was one of our drawbacks. Whereas today, we have had issues where, for some reason, there was an upstream issue, and we were behind for the day for some reason in the morning. The standard operation procedure today is provision a new warehouse, maybe a 2XL, let the daily jobs run off of this warehouse, let them catch up. Mean time to recovery today is about 2 hours. And all of this is happening, like it's shown in the diagram here, is using the processing warehouse, whereas the rest of the company, rest of the organization continue to run their analysis or reporting or whatnot using the regular warehouse. And while we're catching up the data, while we have to push, however far back we are, it's not impacting their regular day-to-day operations. And all of this, like spinning a new warehouse, setting up a new warehouse, probably takes minutes. Here's another example of just accessing the data and how long it used to take us before. Earlier on Hadoop, say if you have a simple request such as counting the users, unique users and impressions for the day for an advertiser for a month. Simple request is this. A typical workflow on Hadoop would have been, since most of the data was stored in serialized protobuf files and each record stored together with 700 columns together, the only pruning that we could do was filter the file by date range. This, usually for a month of data, would result in 2.7 terabytes of scan. And given the long cycle of writing my produce jobs, testing, deploying, a simple extract for a request like such would take a day to extract the data and respond back. Whereas now, with Snowflake, as we ingest the data into Snowflake, Snowflake starts automatically distributing and storing the data in micropartitions. This happens automatically. We don't have to do any extra coding or writing any ingest optimization. The advantages of micropartition is when we try to read the data, it can prune for the date range that we're requesting for, the advertiser, which could be in our where condition, the columns that we are requesting for, like in this case, is just 2 columns. And if for a month of data, today we just scan 180 gigs of data. And since SQL is so easy to iterate, the entire process of producing the results is taking 13 minutes. That's how fast the life has moved from taking a whole day to extract data to getting the data in few minutes. So with Snowflake completely managing our infrastructure and empowering us with fast access to our data, this has really helped us to focus on building and uncovering new data sets about our users and try to understand our consumers and target better messaging to them, and in turn increasing the KPIs for our advertisers. Today we store granular user level data. So today, as the users start interacting with the ads, we store information such as at every interaction, at every impression, we store things like what was the ad, what site, what page, what creative, at what speed are they reading, what are the different gestures they did, like scrolls or tilts or swipe, and then also regular information like time of day, device, and any other how much of it was consumed, at what duration. So we really have granular information about the user who is accessing the ad. This helps us with this, that kind of a micro interaction information helps us know our users pretty closely, and we are able to design new metrics or new data points, such as, say, for example, something that we recently built is called, say, pixel seconds. This is a combination of number of pixels of the ad in view and the amount of time it is on view. So it's a combo of the space that's visible as well as how long it's been visible. So things like these new ways of measuring user engagements have helped us target messaging much more effectively towards our users, and thus increasing the KPIs for our marketers. All right, to summarize the entire Snowflake experience for us, they have enabled us with limitless and secure access to our own enterprise data. This has definitely inspired innovation throughout the organization. All right, Looker benefits. So Looker, as you know, is the business intelligence tool that helps us analyze and visualize the data that's sitting in Snowflake. There's two key features of Looker that have really helped us in our journey. The user-friendly interface. This is a very easy visualization tool, and the business users can build their own dashboards or their own reports without ever need to know SQL or any kind of programming language. So data requests like such, which used to take us back in the day about 2 weeks to run, today we have completely eliminated them reaching out to the engineering team. It has become completely self-serve. All the different departments within the organization could now open up Looker, drag and drop the metrics or the different advertisers or clients that they want the information about, slice and dice the data whichever way they like, visualize it, and get the reports they need. And literally, the request cycle has dropped from 2 weeks to 13 minutes because Looker performs because it just sits on Snowflake. It's really as much time Snowflake takes to respond. All right. One other reason why we went, which was a huge selling point for us, why we went with Looker, was the idea of centralizing all our definitions. This was key to ensure data quality throughout the organization, that we all are speaking and saying the same information everywhere. So back in the day, this used to be a continuous challenge because every time we had to generate a report for our client, we had to write a separate .SQL file or a separate MapReduce job. This always used to result in either human editing errors. There was no centralized governance around how the metrics are defined, if they all had the same formatting. And obviously the coding was long and daunting, delayed response cycle. Here on the right side, I have like two examples where the top one, say it's the same metrics. This is the unit price of click, but one is going off of a gross revenue and the other one is doing a net. And they both look like CPC, but it depends on one is doing gross and one is doing net. And here's another example, which is a formatting issue. Someone is trying to do a round of 2, whereas someone else is doing some other piece of code is doing a concat with $ and round of 3. So this used to be across the board, and when we are sending reports to client, it's obviously, first of all, the formatting isn't the same everywhere, and second, we may be saying same metric, saying 2 different values. So this used to be always, issue with not sharing the same information every time we send out to our clients. But today, because all the definitions are written within in Looker and LookML, like the actual definition of cost per click or the revenue numbers, or the formatting of it. All of this is written in Looker and LookML, and every report, whether it is a grid report or a dashboard, if the cost per click is on it, it's saying the same number because it's pulling the same definitions everywhere. So this definitely ensured through the organization what we are saying, and if a metric is written a certain way, it says the same across the board. And if we ever have to change the definition, we just have to come to Looker and make the change, and it takes effect everywhere else. So just to recap, Looker provides this really intuitive interface that anyone can use and without knowing any SQL or any programming language, and effectively present that information in varied visualizations. All right. Now let's just talk about a couple of case studies that I have here that kind of highlight the benefits that I just spoke about. Here's a use case where we recently released this new engagement management platform called EMP Insights. It's a self-service tool for our marketers where they can measure their campaign performance. Today, the application response time is almost less than 1 minute. And all of this is possible because, A, it's running off of Snowflake dedicated compute power, where we have a dedicated warehouse for this application. So this ensures that it guarantees a fast access to the data, as well as it's using Looker API, which ensures a centralized layer for query definitions. Just to get a sense for how we're reaching this 1 minute response time, this application is mining about 60 million unique users per day, about 300 million impressions per day, over 1 billion unique data points about our users, and this is across some 600 combinations of environments, devices, operating systems, and browsers. This is a view of the application. If you see, all these numbers here are powered off of Looker API, every number here, as well as the graph that you just saw, and the data is coming off of Snowflake. All right. This is another use case where the marketing team in Yieldmo used to have this regular cadence where they would put out periodic nuggets of insights about our consumers and their engagement with Yieldmo ads. Prior to Snowflake and Looker, marketing would have to engage with data engineers and analysts to collate the data, and then collect this data and then run iterations in Excel to visualize it. And if something doesn't work out, they go back, collate the data again with the engineers, come back and run the iteration. So the time to launch would be something like 3 resources, 2 weeks. Whereas today, marketing would just go into Looker, do iterations in the look to best visualize the data, and the time to launch is 1 resource, 1 day. Here's a visual of a blog post from our marketing team. All they had to do was create the slicing and dicing within Looker, get the insights, and then have the blog post ready. All right. So where are we headed? With all this compute power and this visualization setup with Looker, what are we doing with it and where are we headed? So here's just a quick overview of different initiatives that we have taken underway within our company and what we are looking to do with the power from Snowflake and the Looker UI. Some to enumerate here is machine learning. We have been working with machine learning algorithms to see how we can predict our user behavior, optimizing to certain advertiser KPIs like clicking or viewing more or conversions. Targeted messaging. So you want to make sure that you message your consumers based on their intent or based on their preference. So making the messaging more effective with them. Real-time campaign targeting and analytics. Now that we get the data within 5 or 10 minutes of events, is there ways that we could think of real-time targeting? Innovating, finding innovative ways of visualizing better storytelling with Looker. Now we have, D3 visualizations that are now available with Looker, and we are looking at how we could tell a better story using them. And last but not the least, with GDPR, we are actively working to make sure that our data is secured in transit and in rest. Here's a quick visual of how some of our machine learning algorithms are working today. So all the data that we capture about our users, and that's sitting in Snowflake, helps us know about our users pretty closely. And we're using this algorithm to predict their intent. In this case was to predict their intent on clicking. This particular advertiser campaign wanted to optimize for click-through rates. And using this algorithm, we were able to boost the campaign and lift the campaign about plus 32% in clickers throughout the campaign. All right. Finally, to conclude, this is just some key metrics that I currently talked about, the benefits that we have gained since our partnership with Snowflake and Looker. As I mentioned before, our daily request cycles have gone from 2 weeks to 13 minutes. Our time to access the data has gone from 1 day to 13 minutes. And if there is a sense of the number of operational requests that I used to have in my Jira, I used to have maybe 20 tickets open at any given time, and today probably I have say 1, because with Looker, with their self-serve, there's hardly any request coming to the data team for data requests or data pulls. Like I mentioned, all the infrastructures time to time have failures or recovery issues, but today we can recover from any kind of failures within 2 hours, given the access to compute whenever we need. And that has considerably gone down from how we were with 10 hours. And all of this with fast access and managed services given us enough time and energy to kind of focus on the business and adding value to business, which has helped us build new product and potentially millions of dollars in value for our company. So to conclude, choosing and investing in powerful technology partners is probably key to a lifetime successful data product roadmap. And with Snowflake and Looker as our partners today, we dare to dream of disruptive innovation. Thank you. Back to Bob.
Okay, everyone. We're going to move into the question and answer session. By the way, thanks so much, Indu. Really enjoyed your presentation. We've got just a couple minutes here, so we're just going to take a couple of questions. If we don't get to yours, we'll follow up by email. Okay, so Jamie, I'm going to pose this first question to you. It's a pretty broad question. How easy is it to implement Looker?
Thanks, Bob. So it's a great question, and it's kind of a multi-layered question actually too, and sort of the Yieldmo use case is a great example. There's sort of two pieces, connecting to a data warehouse and getting up and running really quickly. You can do that, in minutes, and generate sort of a base LookML model. But really, the power of Looker is creating that governance so that CPC metric that you defined once is common everywhere, and that requires business expertise that's often custom to every single business. And that piece is the nuance where Looker, we're happy to help you figure out these core metrics and help you define them too. But that's the piece that's really, it's more of, how do you integrate data into your day-to-day operations? And that piece is, as sort of Yieldmo highlighted, there's any number of ways you can use this data in operational context, and they can be programmatic, they can be through the API, they can be through the BI tool too. And really, getting up and running is as easy as minutes, and it's sort of changing business process is the next step.
Okay, I'm going to ask this other question, and I'm actually going to combine two questions since we're running up against the top of the hour. They both have to do with just access to reports. First question is, do all employees have access to Looker, or is it restricted to the data analysis team? And the second question is Looker used for internal or external purposes, or both? Do external stakeholders see the reports? So they're both real similar.
Yeah, definitely. So really, Looker is sort of completely customizable. So we certainly have a large number of customers in internal use cases and external use cases where they're generating reports for third parties. And in some of those contexts, they're sending reports via email. Some of them they've created embedded dashboards inside their product directly. Some of them are using APIs to power data products themselves. So certainly both internal and external use cases, and we've got a wide variety of use cases and customers there. And then on the customer, internally, you can basically configure Looker any way you want, and it's a really powerful permissioning and security system too, where you can permission, down at so you can certainly have, users inside an organization that don't have access to Looker. You can certainly have every user inside Looker too. We've got companies that are sort of data democracies where literally the entire company is completely transparent. All data is accessible by every user. We've got companies that are, in more regulated industries too, where data privacy is incredibly important and regulated, and you can basically have very tight controls and permissions then as a result too. Whether it's you can have it at the sort of the raw database level, you can have it at the content level, you can have it sort of at a broader level, sort of users, in the application too.
That's great. Actually, I prefer the data democracy model. But anyway, listen, I want to thank everyone for joining us today. That's all the time we have. I want to apologize if we didn't get to your question. Like I said, we'll follow up via email if we haven't. I'd also like to thank our speakers for today. We've got Michael Nixon from Snowflake. So thanks so much, Michael. Jamie Davidson from Looker. Alex Fu and Indu Narayan from Yieldmo. And if you'd like a copy of the presentation, you can download it once the event is archived, which will be tomorrow. You can also use the same URL or send it to a colleague if you'd like to share the event. Don't worry, you'll receive an email tomorrow with the URL in it as well. It'll be posted for 90 days. And like I said earlier, just for participating, we're going to pick a winner for today's Amazon Echo Dot, and she is Cynthia Lilquist from Honeywell. So we've got your information, Cynthia. We'll get it to you. And that concludes our broadcast for today. Thanks for joining us.